and you referred to story as a practice.
I believe that it is a practice. And I think it goes back to what I'm talking about, the whole thing about narratives constantly evolving, right? And listen, check this out. It's not just for ourselves. It's for us to kind of let go of our judgments and biases of other people, because they too are constantly evolving. I mean, you understand, who was the bully or the mean girl in high school, right? And now here you are in your mid-30s and you keep that same opinion of them. I have to remind myself as a practice that just like I've grown and changed, Mary Sue has grown and changed too. And give her that space and grace for me to learn about who she is today.
Over the rainbow.
Hey, Storymakers, and welcome to a special edition of Tellwell, the podcast, where we are inviting you into a behind-the-scenes look with some of our very exciting speakers that we're going to have at WellTold, the nonprofit storytelling conference, which is coming up April 24th, 2025, here in Fargo and virtually all over the world. And with me today is somebody that I'm wildly excited about welcoming to Fargo for the very first time, Lisa Nelson Haynes from StoryCorps. Hi, Lisa.
How are you doing, Max? It's so good to see you and to be here with you.
It's so good to see you. Now, I think that it would be prudent. I'm going to I would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit, but okay. I think it would be fun just to take people back to only 2 months ago when I cold LinkedIn slid into your DMs and I was like, right. Lisa, you don't know me, but we're hosting this storytelling conference and I think we should talk. And you're like, cool, let's hang out. Within 5 minutes, I think maybe 7 minutes of us hanging out on a Zoom call, you're like, yeah, I'm in. Fargo? Cool. Never been there. What do I need to know? And you were just so in it, so quickly. And you were the quickest yes that we had to speaking at Well. And so I just want to say thank you for your enthusiasm and would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay. Before I start off with that, let me just say, you had me at story. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there, that's it, because that's my jam. All right. People sharing their first person narratives. So yes, I am currently the Chief Program Officer at StoryCorps. But prior to coming to StoryCorps, I've been there almost 3 years now. Every gig I've ever had foundationally has been about storytelling. So for 16 years, that's been the space I was at for the longest. I was the associate director of a really funky multidisciplinary arts organization called the Painted Bride Arts Center. And I had the opportunity I was head of programming except for visual arts, because I don't really have a background in visual arts. And so I got to work with artists not only from all over the country, but from all over the world. And it wasn't around just performing, getting seats getting butts in seats, but all of the artists that we engaged with had to have some sort of community engagement activities around their residency with us at the Painted Bride. And from that job, I think really informed my own practice of not only community engagement, but also the importance of fostering and nurturing community, right? Regardless. And understanding that as humans, all of us have some sort of intersections of our beings, right? And that we have opportunities to develop community with all of those various lenses that we carry. And that has really informed my own artistic practice of first person narrative storytelling, and other people that are interested in doing this work, amplifying the idea of self-agency in developing your own story, right? From Painted Bride, I went and I was the executive director of the Philadelphia Young Playwrights. And I don't have a playwriting background, but fortunately the staff there, a lot of them had gotten their MFAs in playwriting and this, that, and the other. And I had this strong, not only nonprofit background, but also a background in performance. I just came in, was very honest with them. And I said, listen, I'm going to be leaning on you because I don't know much about playwriting. But what I do know, about running an organization and especially working with young people, which is something that I really enjoy doing. I know that I have a lot to offer here, and I work very collaboratively, and we got along very well. I had a really great time there. But then I had this thing that came into my being, into my sphere, I should say, an opportunity to join StoryCorps. And I've been a fan of StoryCorps since its inception. Mm-hmm. And as much as I was loving my job, I said, first of all, I'm never going to get this gig, but let me just see what I can do. I'll just put my name in a hat. And sure enough, I was hired. And it has been an adventure, to say the least, because I wasn't hired to be chief program officer, but I became chief program officer less than 6 months after I joined the organization. And it's a much larger organization than I've ever worked with. And it's really interesting to have an opportunity to see kind of what the wizard does behind the curtain. And that's what I get there. But again, more story work. I also do consulting work, of course. I do storytelling, coaching, all of those things. But it's always about the story. It's always about the storyteller, their perspective, how best for them to find their voice and how they want to say things. And so it's been great. And I think that not only has it informed my professional life, but also my personal life. I mean, my children, who are now young adults, all of their stuff is around narratives, narrative change work, all of that type of thing. So they too have come to understand the importance of us having agency over our own narratives. One of the things that I talk about a lot is, especially for young people, we have a narrative that is projected on us, and we hold on to that. We stay wedded to that. We don't understand that our narratives are constantly evolving, and that's what we need to be amplifying, because, we go through a lot of code switching, ship shaping, all of those types of things. But I want young people to understand it and to move forward with understanding that they have the agency of what that story is that they want to tell, not what's projected on them.
Ooh, I love that. I want to pop back to something that you mentioned, because I loved the way that you framed it. And you referred to story as a practice, much in the same way that somebody would talk about law or medicine or, one of these like high echelon degrees. But you talked about story as a practice. Tell me more.
I believe that it is a practice. And I think it goes back to what I'm talking about, the whole thing about narratives constantly evolving, right? And listen, check this out. It's not just for ourselves. It's for us to kind of let go of our judgments and biases of other people, because they too are constantly evolving. I mean, you understand, who was the bully or the mean girl in high school, right? And now here you are in your mid-30s, and you keep that same opinion of them. I have to remind myself as a practice that just like I've grown and changed, Mary Sue has grown and changed too. And give her that space and grace for me to learn about who she is today. You understand what I'm saying? Because so often we hold on to that. And hopefully they have grown and changed. Hopefully they're not a 40-year-old mean girl going around and messing with folks and making them feel smaller and lesser than themselves, right? So that's how I talk about it, as a practice of embodying, right, the beauty of story. It could be very narrow scoped, or it could be very wide. I did a wonderful workshop this past weekend in Pittsburgh at the tragic shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And they were asking people in their community to talk about their own liberation story. Now, I understood for the Jewish people that we were going to be working with that they understood their liberation story, but we had to explain to non-Jewish people that we all have some sort of liberation story, where we are sometimes finding ourselves in a place of darkness, and then we're trying to find our way out to place of more expansiveness, right? And one of the things that came out as we were preparing for this project, which had me in tears, was because of what we're experiencing in our country right now, as a matter of fact, is the fact that it's not a linear journey. You know, you might be in a place of darkness and then you think you found the light, but then other things can happen that can bring you back into this place of darkness again. Right. And so I really enjoy doing this type of work and doing this type of work in very different types of communities, because it's not transactional. It's this give and take of knowledge and experiences. And you just learn so much from listening and learning about someone else's story.
We talk a lot about story being the great connector, because really what we're trying to do is we are trying to show somebody like, hey, we understand you. We have empathy with you. We have, sometimes in our case, especially as we're working with nonprofits, we're trying to establish like the empathy, but then also the authority. Why are we uniquely positioned to help this population of people? And I think that's really cool, kind of a cool connection to StoryCorps, because I feel like of the little bit that I know about StoryCorps, and most of my consumption has probably been where most people's consumption has been, through National Public Radio, NPR News, Prairie Public here in Fargo. But I'm curious, like, can you give us the for the 8 people who may not know?
Oh no, there's much more than 8 people, and that's the problem. That's the problem.
Oh, that don't know StoryCorps?
Exactly.
Give us the rundown. Who is StoryCorps, and what's your mission?
So StoryCorps was founded this coming October, it'll be 22 years we've been doing this work. And most people would classify us as an oral history nonprofit. You know, we're going around the country and we're collecting people's conversations. Our methodology, our traditional methodology, is 2 people sit down and have a conversation together. Those 2 people know each other. 9 times out of 10, people come out of the experience of having a conversation that's recorded. They learn something different about the other person that they had no idea, even though they have close and sometimes very intimate relationships with. Because when you take the time to sit down and have these conversations, and what we believe is that storytelling your story and the sharing of your story is really foundational to our humanity. And that's what connects us, just like you were saying. We believe that these conversations are healing one story at a time, right? A lot of times people will say, well, who's recorded with you? And I can say we've had some very high profile people, whether it's Barack Obama or George Bush or something, but that's not that's not the aim. The aim is for the everyday person to come in and share their stories. I often hear, and I've heard this for years, when I'm encouraging someone to share their story, they'll say, oh, I don't have a story to tell. Or really, like, my story is that it's not a big deal. Nobody wants to hear my story, right? And that breaks my heart, because everyone does have a story. The fact that you don't think you have a story, that in and of itself is a story right there. We have different initiatives where we focus on certain populations of folks. One of them is our Military Voices Initiative, which is very near and dear to my heart, because this will shock you. I don't really have any real connection with the military. I didn't grow up with any real connection with the military. My grandfather was in World War II, and he had memories of extreme racism, and so never really shared them with the family. He never wanted to talk about it. And so I had an idea that the military was kind of like the other, right? There's people over here that do that. It doesn't really concern me. I don't know. I don't understand it, that whole bit. But since working with Military Voices, it has been transformational for me. It has humanized the military for me in a way that I never expected, just to hear their stories. We don't ask or tell people what to talk about when they come in to record with us. They can talk about anything. They don't have to talk about their military experience or anything like that. But what we are asking them to do is, we understand that just the process of sharing your story is important. People that come and record with us, if they give us their permission, we are able to then have their story archived at the Library of Congress. And I really believe that's the icing on the cake there. I think that's really the secret sauce, because it's also about legacy. And so 50, 60, 70 years from now, somebody can go to the Library of Congress and they can listen to you tell your story in your own voice. And when we're in a time and a space right now where we see erasure of people's real life experiences, that archive is extremely important. It's extremely important. That's not someone saying, well, I heard. No, you're hearing from the storyteller is telling you what they know from their perspective. We have an airstream that travels across the country. We go to 10 different cities throughout the year, stay in those communities, engage in those communities for 4 to 6 weeks. And that's because we really believe that our stories lend themselves or complement the complexity and beauty of this country. So that's who we are and what we do.
Casual. Just casually like
just that's all we do. We just roll around the country recording stories. That's it. That's all what we do. But
I love it. I think it's an incredible mission, and I maybe didn't even quite realize how paralleled some of our missions are, because we're doing some of this same work specifically within the LGBTQIA plus community here in Fargo-Moorhead with a podcast that we have called Pride Stories. We're also supporting, we have this great group called the Red River Rainbow Seniors, who they record oral history projects, and it's so fun to be able to collect and listen to those. Mm-hmm. And we're working with them to try to turn those into podcasts to give them more of a voice, because right now it's like you gotta jump in and you have to go to like the North Dakota State University archives, and then 8 steps
exactly,
to download a WAV file. And so I love that, and I love to hear that, and I love to hear that all these voices are being captured. So with the little bit of time that we have left together, I would love, can you give people a little preview, a little appetizer of what they can expect of Lisa at WellTold?
Sure. So, I'm going to be discussing and sharing ideas around the importance of, especially in the nonprofit space, of ethical storytelling, right? Because so often, nonprofits have very unique challenges. And for the most part, people that work in nonprofits are very empathetic, intentional, thoughtful people of service. Okay. And sometimes, in order for us to continue to do our work, we're dependent on funding support from institutions and organizations that don't necessarily understand the work that we do or the alignment. They might understand our mission statement and things like that, but understand really the day-to-day of what we do. And how do we articulate that without leaning into things like I call trauma porn and all of that, where we're, and trying to translate the good work that we do in a way that is going to solicit support, secure support for our organization. And, I really try to share some skills and thoughts and examples of people that are doing really good work around this. We're going to be talking about asset framing as opposed to deficit framing. Understanding that a lot of times the stories that we have to tell are very challenging, but how do we do that in a way that we're still honoring the person's humanity in a very authentic way? So that's what we're going to be jamming with when I get there to Fargo.
I love it. I'm so excited to welcome you to Fargo and for you to experience some of the quirkiness and delightfulness that is in the area. Hopefully you'll be coming at a time that it is nice and warm.
But regardless, I'm going to be ready for anything. I don't care. I want it all. So if all of a sudden y'all have to have a late April snowfall, I'm going to be cool. I'm good. I'll be good. I'll be ready.
As long as we have people that know how to drive in the snow.
Listen, as my mother says, brown sugar doesn't melt. It just lumps up. So listen, y'all ain't gonna hurt nothing. Okay.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Lisa, for folks who want to engage with you, maybe before the conference, are you on any of like the socials?
I am. Well, first of all, Yes. Okay. Look for Mango Mama on Instagram. Okay. That's where it's best to find me. I'm Mango Mama on Instagram. All right. And then you can also, if you want to email me directly, you can find all of my information on StoryCorps' website, and it's storycorps.org. So please do reach out.
Love that. I will be. You have a new follower with me already.
Thank you very much, Max. Thank you.
Lisa, for folks who haven't yet registered, if you haven't yet registered, register now, because I think this episode is going to be one of the last in the series, and we only have like a couple tickets left. If you register with the code PODCAST, PODCAST, you can knock the full price back to early bird pricing. So for our normal cost is $297. It knocks it all the way back to $97. For our virtual attendees, it knocks it from $97 all the way to $27. And so you are going to get just like a wild amount of resources with brilliant minds like Lisa and the other speakers that we'll have on stage, as well as just like a darn good time. We have the happiest hour that's happening. We'll have a pre-party at one of my favorite cideries here in Fargo, and it's just going to be a great time. So Lisa, welcome to Fargo. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you, Max. Listen, thank you so much for reaching out and letting me know about this opportunity. You know, what that demonstrates to me, number one, is a personality, a person that I really want to be aligned with, that will take a chance and is curious. And so I'm really looking forward to participating in April with this festival or conference. It's going to be fabulous. Thank you.
It's going to be great. Thanks, Lisa. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. All righty. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into this special WellTold edition of Tellwell the podcast. If you're ready to transform how you share your mission, join us on April 24th in person in Fargo or virtually for WellTold, the nonprofit storytelling conference where powerful missions meet masterful storytelling. If you're interested, make sure to use code PODCAST at welltoldconference.com to unlock early bird pricing. Whether you're a nonprofit leader, communicator, or mission-driven entrepreneur, this intimate hands-on experience will help your impact become impossible to ignore. Interested in sponsoring? Visit the website to see how you can support organizations working to grow and do the most good in our community. If you enjoy this podcast, you'll love the in-person experience and the rest of the episodes in this special series where we're talking to all of the speakers and sponsors making this incredible experience a reality. When good work is well told, change becomes unstoppable, and we invite you to join us at WellTold, the nonprofit storytelling conference in Fargo, April 24th.